Welcome to Coffee House Writers Group podcast number 9. This one is a shop talk that is a writer's resource lesson sort of thing. And this is how to query an agent. Very important, something I definitely paid attention to and will be re-listening to later. Normally we come out one of these once a month. This is an exception. So if you're unfamiliar with us so far, you will find this podcast on iTunes, on YouTube, on CHWGP.org, on Stitcher, another podcasting service. Please like, favorite, share us around, comment, and that's it for self-promotion. Cue the music. Okay, so now it is the end of October at the time of this release. We have the World Series wrapping up. We have Halloween in a couple days. All Saints Day, Dia de los Muertos. The U.S. election coming straight up after that. But we're not going to talk about that specifically. We are a nonprofit 501c3. And it's not only that, but we don't want to alienate anybody. So as someone semi-speaking for the organization, we cannot take sides. However, I would encourage you to go vote. And the real world out there does affect us. I would like to talk about certain things out in the real world from a writer's perspective and how you write the real world itself, different things about it, incorporating the diversity of it, making it realistic if that is your goal. It is one of my goals in my writing. So there will be many more podcasts to come to talk on those certain things. I have had it in the cards to do diversity podcasts before. That was supposed to happen actually a few months ago. And while that is put on hold, it will eventually happen. And while we're on the topic of real world things, let's talk about the author itself, the writer, as you probably are listening to this podcast. What we talk about a lot in this podcast are things that require self-awareness, and it's really important for the writer to know thyself. You have to know what you're good at, what needs some work, who you as a person are, what your goals are, what this thing you're writing is. And when you know what it is, it becomes that much easier to write. That's one of the things that's much harder to get from a critique group is, what is your thing? What is this work you're giving to the rest of us to critique? We can tell you as a group that we don't know what it is, and then that tells you there's a communication problem, that even things that shine as without precedent, the truly unique works out there, those you can still describe. So as you're listening to this podcast, or after you finish it, just really examine before you submit to an agent, or really go any further in your process as a writer to get published. What is your work? What is your goal with your work? What is it supposed to be? Sum it up. Decide why it exists. And that may get very deep for you, but it's an important question. On some level, I'm asking you to examine why you exist, if you tie your being a writer that much to your being. What are you setting out to do? Is it to give yourself a voice? Is it protest? Is it to brighten someone else's day? Is it because you perhaps have a perspective that you do not feel is well represented in the literature out there? Maybe you just have the talent for it, and so this is what you pursue because you're good at it and you like it, which is just as good a reason as any. And I've talked about why we write here on the podcast before, but there are so many different layers to that question. And this podcast, I would like you to think more about why you're writing this exact particular thing that you are writing. Not why you write as a whole, per se, but why this particular thing exists and what is it? Is there an audience for it? What does it do that other works do not? What is it good at that other works are also good at? What can you compare it to? Now we have Alana Saltz on the podcast today, and I will let her in the recording give you some of her qualifications and where to follow her. And I recommend that you do, because she, like so many other people out there, are great resources of information. I try to make this podcast a good resource of information. So enough talking about it. Let's go ahead and listen to it. Here's podcast number 9 here for you. Of the few shop talks that I've been able to attend, yours was one of them.
Yes.
Because it's something that strongly interests me, and I'm sure a lot of authors, especially those who are listening to the podcast now, by the title of this video, you get it's How to Land an Agent, How to Query an Agent. Mm-hmm. How do you know so much about querying agents?
Let's see. Well, I have a lot of personal experience. I've been a writer for most of my life. I started querying a memoir about 2 years ago. Sent out a bunch of queries, got some good responses, but ultimately, didn't happen then. I started interning with an agent at Folio Literary Agency in New York City, and it was a remote agency internship. So I worked closely with Steve Troha, who represents a bunch of really big name authors, mostly nonfiction authors, and learned a lot about the query process, just how an agency works, how to be professional, what authors should do in terms of working with agents, and that really opened my eyes to the industry. So when I went back in and started querying my novel, I was much better prepared and had a lot stronger of a query that time around, and my query actually got into a bunch of high-profile query contests and got some really good feedback from agents, and I'm still waiting to hear, but it's looking good.
Only writers would have something like a query contest.
Yeah, it's a little strange, but they're actually really good, and the best part about those is that you meet a lot of other writers, and you meet people kind of in your stage of the process, and really, I've made a lot of friends, I've had mentors come out of that, and...
From the query stuff?
Yeah, I mean, just there were 2 mentors from Pitch Wars, which is one of the biggest query contests, volunteered their time just because they liked me, and they liked my manuscript, and I didn't even, officially place, but I was sort of an unofficial mentee alternate. And they were just really generous and read my book and gave me feedback on the query, and it was just a really great experience.
So when you were working closely with an agent, would they say this and this and this, or would you just observe over time what they liked?
I mean, there's definitely sort of standards that are established in the industry, and when you do your research on query writing, most of that is true. But you can get a feel for individual agents when you work closely with them. You can kind of see, like the agent that I was interning for, he only wanted pretty high-profile clients. So if you were just coming in and you didn't have a strong platform, he'd kind of just not even really pay attention. But if somebody had a strong platform, then he'd be like, okay, what are the numbers? Can I sell this? Is this marketable? I mean, it really is a business. And that was a hard lesson to learn, but it was an important one.
Are most agents like that, or...?
Probably, at least to an extent. I think the ones that represent more fiction are less stringent about having a big platform. It's okay to not have too many publications because they're really more about the story and will the story sell than, who's this author and who's going to buy a book from this author.
Yeah, I understand if you want to put an autobiography out there or memoir, it certainly helps to be Barack Obama or someone that everybody recognizes is going to be interested in their life.
Yeah.
And instead of fiction, it really doesn't matter ultimately who wrote it as long as it's good, whether it's going to be me, Joe Schmo, Stephen King.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, more people are going to buy Stephen King because of his name, but still, it doesn't affect what the quality of the story is. And the words don't care who wrote them.
Yeah, and that's true. Although they do appreciate if the writing's polished, if it looks professional. They don't want somebody who just kind of splurted something out and it just doesn't read well. Even if it has an interesting story or a hook, the writing does also need to be there. And they do appreciate if you have a degree, if you've been part of writing groups, if they can see that you've critiqued and that you're serious about it and this isn't just something that's sort of a passing hobby. And they can always tell when people aren't really serious and they don't want to work with people who aren't really devoted to being a writer.
Do they tell that in the query letter?
Yes, in the author bio, and we'll probably talk a bit about format, but the author bio is really, really important, and I think people don't give that enough attention, but you want to say there where you've studied, even if you've just taken a couple of writing workshops, or you're part of Coffee House Writers Group, or some other, writing group in your area, say that, because they want to know, okay, this person's committed, they're getting out of their house, they're learning how to write, they care about their writing, and about it getting better, and they know how to take feedback and understand critique.
Absolutely, because writing's a craft, and if you don't work at it, even with all the talent in the world, it won't do you much good.
Yeah, especially now because there's so many resources. There's online classes, even if you can't get out. There's low residency MFA programs. I did one of those. There's so many opportunities, and a lot of them are really cost effective. And they just, show to these agents that you're serious and you care about your work.
So in the format, when I was being taught essay, in junior high or wherever I started to learn essays, it was very strict. There was the intro sentence, line here, line here, and your thesis, then concrete detail, commentary, concrete detail, blah, blah, blah. They stuck very hard to that. But then when I went to college, they recognized this is really robotic, this doesn't work. And then when I tried something a little different, it sounded so much better.
Yeah.
Is that going to be similar for our construction here, or is it going to be even more rigid?
That's a complicated question. I generally advise people, and I also am a freelance editor, and I've critiqued a lot of queries, and a couple of my clients have gone on to sign agents from these queries. I think it does need to follow a general format, but there's some flexibility within that format, because they don't want to see something really weird. They're reading sometimes thousands of queries a week, these agents. They're really getting inundated with material, and generally, I think the stats, I could be wrong, but they usually get about 50,000 queries a year and maybe sign 2 new clients out of those. I mean, it's insane.
Do they read all of them, or have somebody read them?
Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them pride themselves on, like, either I or one of my interns look at every single query and give them a response, but some don't. I've definitely, as I've queried, I generally hear from about half of the people.
The response is a little bit to ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I often get form responses. When you're a little, like, if you're in a contest or kind of at a higher level of querying, you'll usually get personalized feedback, and if they request a partial or full manuscript, they almost always do give feedback saying, this is what I liked, this is what, I didn't connect with, here's what you can work on. Which is always helpful.
So what's the first thing that you want to touch on? A format, or which agents?
I'd probably start with format and then talk a little bit about how to actually find the agents to query. So for query format, there is sort of a standard, and so basically the general query format, you just want a simple email subject line that's just query for title and then your genre in parentheses, so they know immediately what the name of your project is and what genre it is. Generally, they'll start with some kind of formal salutation, and I'm going to read a query example that I took off of Writer's Digest's Successful Queries series, which is a really great series, and has a lot of successful queries that have gone on to land agents. So you usually want to have something kind of personalized and formal, just so the agent knows why you're contacting them, and a little bit about your project just from that.
Why you've chosen this agent to queries, so that they know you're not just one of 100 million agents they're trying to contact.
Yeah, because if it looks like you're just kind of sending this form thing to everybody, they'll be like, well, why should I bother with you? You didn't research me. I can't trust that you know why you're even writing to me. Like, this is just, they won't take that seriously. So you want to say, I'm contacting you because I found your bio on this site, or I saw that you're looking for new young adult contemporary fiction projects, just something simple. If you do happen to follow them on Twitter, or you start following them on Twitter, or read their blog, because some agents have blogs, you can definitely mention, I really enjoy your blog. I've enjoyed following you on Twitter. I also like Harry Potter. I don't know. Like, you can throw in like a little personal thing, especially if you've talked to them a little on Twitter. So then you'll want to get into sort of the hook of the query. So, you'll say like, in the title, this character does this, and it's sort of just the hook and the introduction to the story. It's a little hard to explain it without actually, reading a query, but so you want to go into kind of the initial hook that will grab them, and then transition into sort of a short and engaging synopsis of the book, which is usually about a paragraph or two that sort of covers the strong plot points of the book. And then you'll want to finish up with comparative titles, your author bio, and then a conclusion and sort of a signature, and if they request any opening pages, you'll want to include those there.
So let's talk about what each one of those are individually. So what would be a good example of some sort of a strong introduction, the engaging hook or something like that?
Okay, so I'm just going to go from this example that I took from Successful Queries, and then, I'll kind of read what they did and talk a little bit about why, that was effective. So This letter starts, Dear Ms. Humphrey, and you always want to be polite, use the Ms., make sure you have their gender right. Don't guess at that, find a picture, because some people have sort of, not clear, Alex
I have
something.
a picture and I can't tell.
That gets a little touchy too, but then you can look in their bio, because sometimes they'll be in third person, and sometimes agents will even say on their Twitter, like, I am a she, or I am a he, just because they get that so much. I've seen that too. So make sure you have their gender right. So Dear Ms. Humphrey is the intro to this one. I'm contacting you because I've read on various writing websites that you are expanding your young adult client list. Okay, like very simple, formal, it's fine. And that's something, that line could either go at the beginning or the end of the query. That's some place that you have a bit of flexibility. You can either start with that, or if you don't feel like it's that strong, like that one's not that amazing,
so
maybe put that later.
I will see agents that are looking for new clientele mostly on Writer's Digest is one of the things that I end up following. So that I could specifically say, I'm contacting you because I saw you on Writer's Digest and that you're trying to get more fantasy works.
So then they know you're doing your research, you're aware of where to look for agents, you're aware of what's going on in the writing world, and it just helps them know you're not just kind of coming out of nowhere, and, gives you some credibility, I think. So then this author goes on to say, in Losing Faith, which is the title, 15-year-old Bree Jenkins discovers her sister's death may not have been an accident. So that's kind of your hook. That's like it has the title, it has the age, a little bit about the protagonist, and then it's got like this hook, her sister's death may not have been an accident. Yeah. Oh, like that's intriguing.
Yeah, so that's the hook that'll come somewhere in the first chapter, either on the first page or the end of the first
sort of the inciting
chapter.
Incident of the story. Sort of what's going to be leading the character to go down whatever path.
That can be tough for some people to do in one sentence.
Yes, it is. And one of the things about query writing is it's really tough. I actually now write queries before I write the book itself, because it helps me like figure out what the plot points are in my potential book, and like how it will be presented to agents, and whether it actually has something marketable about it. And I actually really recommend that, but most people probably won't do that.
Yeah, so I heard that if you can't summarize your own book in 3 sentences, then you don't really know it.
Yeah, and that's probably true. I mean, it can be hard to do, and it's okay if it's hard, but you really should be able to. Otherwise, you might want to look again at your plot and sort of the structure, and look at a kind of a plot and structure guide to see where are things kind of going all over the place.
And we understand there's so many different branches of different stories. You have how many different characters in Game of Thrones, but the thing is, you can boil it down to what it is at the bones and its essentialness. What is the main overarching issue.
Yeah, you don't have to say, in House Stark, like, these characters go through this, and then, and what you just want to say,
Gosh, that's a mess.
Yeah, you just want to say there are 4 houses, and they're all battling to get to the throne, or, if you can at least have a high level picture of it, then I think that works fine. But, yeah, and also that's the thing about the query is that you don't want to include everything. Really important, the length should be no more than about 300 words total, including your bio. This is something, I solicited submissions for this podcast through the Pitch Wars hashtag, because Pitch Wars is going to be starting August 3rd, I believe. So everyone's getting their queries ready. And so I said, hey, if anybody has queries they'd like feedback on, I might have time to critique some. And one of the ones I got was 650 words long. And it was really, really long. And I wanted to use it as an example, but I didn't even think I'd have time to read it, because it was so long. So that's a really important part of query writing. Keep it short, concise, but engaging. That's really the key. And it's really hard. But it's really important that you do that, because they will not read it. If they look and see that it's that long, they'll just see a bunch of blocks of text. They might not even read it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have such short attention spans for online, such low tolerance for online. If I'm on Reddit and I click on an expansion thing and I'm expecting something that's maybe 50 words long, and I see it's taking up my entire webpage, I'm like, no, I'm not reading this. It's not worth my time.
Yeah, like too long didn't read.
It's too long to get to a punchline of a joke.
Yeah. So don't be like that. You don't, even if you feel like, oh, but they have to know this detail, this is really important. They probably don't. You just want to hook them, really. Just grab them, pique their interest, give them enough vital details so they can know, okay, this is what this story is going to be. this is how I would kind of market it. This is sort of the framework. These are the comparative titles. Okay, now I'd like to read the pages. That's all you're doing, is enticing them to read more pages. You're not telling them the whole thing. It's not a synopsis. You don't need to tell them how you thought of the idea. You don't have to tell them where the idea places in the greater canon of ideas and how it came about and when you started writing and how this is your dream. Like, don't do that. Like, keep it very simple, professional. And so, I'll read a little more of this one, but so...
Yes, please do.
Yeah, so it starts with that hook. In losing faith, 15-year-old Bree Jenkins discovers her sister's death may not have been an accident. At the funeral, an uncorroborated story surfaces about Faith's whereabouts the night of her tragic fall from a cliff. When Bree encounters a strange, evasive boy at Faith's gravesite, she tries to confront him, but he disappears into a nearby forest. So we're starting to get sort of some of the characters, some of the actions around that. Bree searches out and questions the mysterious boy, finding more information than she bargained for. Faith belonged to a secret ritualistic group, which regularly held meetings at the cliff where she died. Okay, so here we've got kind of like some information's coming together, there's tensions rising, there's definitely stakes and conflict here. Bree suspects foul play, but the only way to find out for sure is to risk her own life and join the secret cult. Okay, so we don't even get what's going to happen to her when she joins the cult. We don't figure out what actually happened. We're just hooked. Like, we want to know now.
Right. If this were a television show, this would be a summary of the pilot.
Yeah. I mean, looking at, like, book blurbs, back covers of books, synopses for TV shows, like, just those little kind of hooky things are really good examples of what you want to do in a query.
Yes. And it may not always be the best written examples, but Netflix, they have 2 sentences to hook you into watching whatever that show is.
Yeah, and I've been noticing those a lot, and I was like, okay, like, that's interesting how they do those hooks on there, because sometimes I think they're good, and sometimes I don't think they're that great. But they, those are a good example of kind of a log line, 1-sentence version, kind of a hook that explains the story.
Yeah, the description and TV guide.
Yeah, so you want something kind of like that. So then we go into the comparative titles, which is a really important aspect. A lot of queries that I've critiqued don't have them. So you really want to include at least 1 or 2, more like at least 2 titles and or authors that can be compared to the book that you've written. So an agent will immediately get a sense of, okay, this is where I'll be able to place it. This is kind of what the tone's going to be like. This is kind of what we're working with here. So in this example, it says, losing faith, 76,000 word young adult, will appeal to readers of John Green's Looking for Alaska and Laurie Halse Anderson's Catalyst. So
why those titles?
Well, I haven't read this book, Losing Faith, but those are good examples because she picked one that's kind of a more high-profile author, John Green, Looking for Alaska. That's one of his lesser-known titles, but obviously John Green is a phenomenon, and a lot of people are buying his contemporary young adult novels, so that's a good example, but she balances it out with a sort of lesser-known title by Laurie Halse Anderson.
So why would she say Looking for Alaska and not say Fault in Our Stars, which has its own movie at this point?
Well, part of it could have been because it has its own movie. It's kind of like you don't want to comp Harry Potter probably ever again because it's like, oh, you think you're the next Harry Potter. Like, agents will probably get the wrong idea and think that you think you're amazing.
You have an ego, yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm going to be the next Harry Potter. They don't want to see that. And they might also think you don't read very widely in your genre. It's like, oh, maybe this person's only read Harry Potter and I'm not going to read a book where somebody's only read Harry Potter and then wrote this book. It's probably going to be too much like it, or it'll be just not that complex.
So should these titles be more varied from each other or more similar to each other?
That's an interesting question. And some people also comp TV shows. I've seen it done successfully where someone will comp it to a book and then a TV series. Like, you could, I don't know if Game of Thrones is a great example. I'm trying to think if there's one that's less high profile. I think somebody comped The Walking Dead or something like that. I mean these are big shows. But it's kind of, it sort of works when you comp it with a book that's maybe a little less known and The Walking Dead, so they'll be like, oh, okay, like, I can kind of see what sort of universe you're building here. It's a little risky, but I think in some cases, if a TV show really works well, like your book does similar things to that TV show, but you want to find things, either it's something meets something, or just here are a couple of similar titles that will sort of be in the same realm as my book.
I see. So if my book is a fantasy book where there's war, can I list one fantasy book, maybe Neil Gaiman, and then I list a war book that is like realistic war? Yeah,
that would actually be good, because then it can be like the meets thing. So like this fantasy book meets this war book. and it's a fantasy war book. So they can be like, oh, that's interesting. Or you could comp to already published fantasy war books if that exists. I think the meets is good when the thing you're doing doesn't quite exist yet, or at least hasn't been done amazingly successfully yet. So like if you don't know any fantasy war books that are, that high profile, you could do that kind of the this meets this format. But generally, at least in my queries, I do books that are sort of on the same themes and levels as what I'm pitching.
Okay. So what do we got next?
Okay, so that's all she has. Like, it's very short and concise. She's got the salutation, the personalized introduction, the synopsis, comp titles, and authors. So then we go into her bio. So she says, my published stories have won an Editor's Choice Award in the Green Silk Journal and appeared in Mississippi Crow magazine. I'm a member of Romance Writers of America, where my manuscript is a finalist in the Florida chapter's Launching a Star contest. For your convenience, I've pasted the first chapter. Thank you for your time and consideration. So her bio is very short and concise, just sort of the highlights. You can tell she's professional. She's a member of Romance Writers of America. She's had a couple of publications. She's shown through her comp titles that she does read in the genre she's writing. So that it just kind of shows that this is a professional writer with some professional writing background. And so this was a successful query, and this author signed with this agent.
Very good. Okay, so you've sent out your letter. What is the next thing you do as the writer?
Okay, so first of all, make sure that you've read their guidelines really carefully before you send it out. They'll usually have different requirements. Some will want the first 10 pages, some will want the first 50 pages, a couple will want the full manuscript up front. It's unusual, but, and make sure you have that ready, by the way, before you start querying. Don't query before you have a full manuscript ready, because in case you get a request, you don't want to be like, oh, I should probably finish that book. Oops. They don't want to wait around. They're expecting it the day that they request it. So have it ready, have it polished. I made the mistake once of trying to do one final proofread before sending out queries, and that just was really stressful. So just make sure it's totally
second guessing yourself?
Yeah, I was like, I should just read it over one more time, and then, I was delayed getting it back to the agents, and I was really worried about it, and it just wasn't a good idea. So make sure it's polished and, ready to go.
By the way, sending this letter, snail mail, email?
Pretty much email, unless they ask for snail mail, but very few still want snail mail. But if they do want it snail mail, yeah, just print it out, print out the pages, whatever they
Will it be
want.
more likely to be read? One hint that I read online, because I read a lot of hints, is that you send them a letter that they have to sign for, so you know that they get it and that they have to actually have it.
I feel like that could backfire, though. That could just kind of annoy them.
I've also heard that.
Yeah, I think because when I was interning at the agency, I spent a couple weeks in New York actually volunteering or, interning in person there. And they're mostly not around. The agents kind of come and go. They're in meetings. It's going to be an intern signing anyway, most likely, or somebody, an administrative assistant. So they're not going to sign for it themselves anyway. Their intern might lose it. They might be annoyed by it and be like, oh, you got another letter that I had to sign for. I think there's just kind of a lot of things that could go wrong in that approach, and they might be like, oh, now I have to open this envelope, and well, what is this person thinking? Why are they sending me snail mail? I was checking my email earlier, I could have just read it as an email. So just because I have interned at an agency and feel like I have somewhat of a sense of how that stuff goes down there, I would not recommend that unless it's the way they've requested it.
Why would they do that, do you think?
Why
would they request snail mail? You think they're just old school?
Yeah, some are just old school, and I think they think it deters people who aren't serious about it. Which is probably actually true, because there were a couple agents I didn't bother querying because they wanted snail mail, but, maybe that would have been a good fit, and they're sort of potentially losing out on clients too. So it's very, maybe 1 out of 100 still want snail mail. It's very unusual. But if they do, if you like the agent, just send it out that way.
Now, how do you know if your query is getting buried and you send it and then 10 minutes later it is 100 emails down?
Yeah, a lot of them have systems. I've seen a lot of agents tweet about their systems. They're like, I do read everything, but I read it the order that it's been received. So, it does get buried, but I think they're kind of maybe working at it backwards. They all have their own process. Some I've had a response as soon as a day later, and one that took 6 months, and some that I never hear back from. So it's just you just never know what they're doing. You can get a bit of a sense from some of them on Twitter. They'll kind of talk about how they do what they do, but that can also drive you a little crazy. There's also a site, which one is it? It's the Query Tracker database. Some of those people self-report their return times. So if you get a paid membership, you can see what the general turnaround time is for these agents based on self-reports from writers who have queried them.
And I suppose there is an extra motivation to get through them quickly, so they see that and say, hey, I want to submit to this guy.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the problem is that these agents, mostly unless they're new, already have a set group of clients. So they're kind of looking for the diamond in the rough. They're sort of maybe looking at queries when they have time, but their main duties are helping their current clients, helping them revise, submitting out to editors, coordinating with editors, signing deals. That's really their main job. And then they're kind of weeding through now and then when they have time to see, oh, is there kind of somebody I'm missing out here? I think there's that kind of allure of like the new sparkly new author and like who can I bring in and add to my, the fold. But a lot of times I've gotten rejections just saying, I'm sorry, my client list is full. I can't take on any new people. And then there's new agents who are, just looking for their first clients, and they're a lot more likely to request and sort of consider taking you on. So new agents are a good avenue for a lot of writers.
Okay, so we can talk about which agents and whether to pick them a little bit later. So let's first go on to, you want to keep track of what you submitted. Yes,
so Excel spreadsheets, or even if you're not great with Excel, Microsoft Word, just keep a list of the agents you've queried and what agencies they're from and what material you sent them, and then keep track of when they've gotten back to you, what they've requested, what they've said, or, at a certain point, if they haven't, after, maybe 3 or 4 months, you can just sort of, I mark CNR, which means close no response. So I just keep track of the people like, okay, it's been 3 months since I sent the query. I'm probably never going to hear from them, so I'm not going to keep holding my breath on that agent. So yeah, spreadsheets are invaluable because it's unlikely you'll query the same person twice, but it's more that you'll know what's going on. You can be like, okay, so I queried these 10 agents 2 months ago and I haven't heard back from any of them. Maybe my query is not very strong. I should rewrite it and submit to a new group. That sort of is the value of the spreadsheet.
And probably not to the same group?
No, definitely not. Yeah, you never want to requery an agent unless maybe it's like a year or two later with a new project, but even then, unless you receive some kind of encouragement from them on the first round, it's not likely you'll hear back from them.
Okay. Now, if you do get a response, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things you should do in interacting with agents. Mm-hmm. If you get a thank you, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you, or you get some sort of response back, do you respond back without something new just to say, hey, thank you?
I always do. I think that's really important because especially if they take the time to give any kind of personalized feedback, if it's a form that's clearly just, thank you for your submission, I unfortunately cannot take you on as a client right now, thanks so much anyway. If it looks like it wasn't personalized, but some will say like, dear Alana, I really enjoyed this character. I felt like this could be changed a little bit. Unfortunately, I'm not going to take it on this time, but I really enjoyed reading your work. Please keep in touch or something like that. Definitely respond to that, at least with just even a simple thank you for your time. I really appreciate your feedback. Even if it kind of hurts, just make yourself do it because, they might remember that you didn't if you ever get in touch with them again in the future.
So do you ever take what they tell you, what they liked or didn't like about the story, and apply it to your work as a critique?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that changed everything in terms of when I was querying the memoir. Augustin Burroughs' agent got back to me on a full manuscript, and he said, this is a really heartfelt memoir, but I think your platform's just not strong enough. So I think you need to start submitting essays out to like Salon, Huffington Post, all these places. And that changed everything. That's when I started doing that. That's when I started submitting stuff out, was just because this agent kind of opened my eyes to like, okay, I really need to develop my platform. Like I can't just keep sending this out because no one's gonna. I'd been getting the same feedback, but he was so specific and like took the time to really steer me the right direction that it totally changed what I was doing. And I started submitting out to like Salon and Huffington Post and Hello Giggles and all these different places and got stuff published. So I'm still, I still don't have an agent for the memoir, but I'm a lot closer now and still working toward that.
What about if it's not about your personal life, if your professional life and it's about the work in question? that I didn't like this, but, I really wish that this character was a boy or this character was a girl.
Yeah, that's a little trickier. I would wait until you get feedback from at least a few agents and see if they're all saying the same thing, like, oh, I love the concept, but the voice just isn't working for me. That could be subjective, or it could be just a problem that pretty much every agent is going to experience because maybe the voice isn't developed enough, or it's too distant, or whatever the problem is. So I tend to look for patterns in feedback, and then once I get that enough, and I'll also talk to my beta readers and mentors and say, hey, like, a couple of agents said this. Did you think that? Like, do you think I should work on that too? People who have read the book can kind of also give an additional perspective on that.
Okay. So what about phone calls?
No phone calls, ever. Don't ever call an agent. They will not like that. They will not answer. They'll think you're crazy. Yeah, definitely no phone calls. No mass emailing, no weird emails. I saw, like, this one guy online was bragging about how he'd sent this really creepy email to some of the agents who hadn't gotten back to him that was sort of like, hey, I'm wondering why you haven't gotten back to me. Sort of like a rejected guy on a dating website sort of email. And they, apparently one or two of them got back to that. But I just was like, if I were an agent, I would not take kindly to that sort of weird, passive-aggressive, like, hey, why haven't I heard back from you? Like, what are you doing? It seemed really unprofessional. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that guy ever signed with anybody, but that's certainly not something I would recommend. Like, being creepy, being weird. Constantly commenting on their Twitter posts or, anything like that. Just, it's good to kind of talk to them now and then, but don't be, like, creepy about it.
Okay, so you follow an agent on Twitter because, mm-hmm. Realistically, unless this agent is someone that I've heard for other reasons, I'm following them because I'm interested in maybe submitting to them.
Yeah.
What do you think of liking and replying, or what do they ever call it now? Favorite? I know it's the heart thing instead of the star.
Favoriting
so anyways, so replying to them, talking to them every now and again, so that then when they receive my letter, they say, oh, I recognize this guy from Twitter, maybe?
Yeah, that can be really good. As long as you're not constantly doing that, because then they'll be like, oh, there's that annoying person that every single thing, they're liking it. Like, why? Oh, now I know why. Oh, they're just kissing up. You want to be strategic about it and also genuine about it. Like, if they say something that's really funny, do a quick response. Like, I've had a couple agents follow me back just because I've sort of interacted with them very modestly, just every now and then, every few days, maybe like something that I genuinely like, reply and say, oh, that's funny, or, something more clever than that, ideally. But, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, just just treat them like they're a normal person that you're following on Twitter, essentially. Just don't overdo it. But, yeah, if they recognize your name, I had one agent, who was like, oh, yeah, I recognize you from Twitter. Like, I've enjoyed, talking with you on there. I still, didn't get representation from her, but I think she got back to me maybe a little more quickly and was definitely generous with her feedback. So I do think that gives you a little bit of an edge. It won't necessarily make the deal happen, but it will help, maybe get a faster response and a more personalized response. Yeah, you're forming more of a relationship.
So in choosing my agent, before I follow them on Twitter, decide I want to submit to that guy or gal. Mm-hmm. How do I know they're the one for me?
That's a little tricky.
We don't go through the rose ceremony.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. Although sometimes you kind of do. Well, the Twitter contests can be a bit of a shortcut towards finding agents, because in the Twitter contest format, you're kind of bringing the agents to you. Because normally what happens is you'll enter your query and maybe your first page into one of these contests, and I'll, share some of those later. And then if you get in, which is the if, they don't take everybody, but if the readers think that you have a strong query, it'll be posted to a site, and then 20, 30 agents will all be looking, and they can directly make requests.
Right. Yeah. Now being a writer requires social skills. Like, that's one of the reasons why we do this. We don't have them.
I know. And but I'm glad that I've been pushing myself to do these things, because pretty much all the querying I've been doing for this current novel, it has been through contests and Twitter pitches. So I've actually been able to skip the research step and sort of only query people who have expressed interest, either through favoriting a tweet during a Twitter pitch party or, leaving a comment on a query that was in a contest. So I sort of skipped a bit of the research step this time. It's not necessarily the best way to go, especially if you're not having a lot of luck getting into contests, but...
You ever feel like the wrong agent will want you?
That's always a concern, but, if you always want to do research before you actually send them materials, because there's definitely a lot of pseudo agents and there are scammy agents. I've been contacted by at least a few and kind of scammy publishers. So you always make sure, even if somebody likes something or leaves a comment in a contest, look them up. Make sure they're on Publishers Marketplace.
Don't be too desperate.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Don't waste your time. Like, make sure they have sales, or if they're new, that they're with a reputable agency that has sales, and then you can query them. But yeah, definitely don't just do it because they've expressed interest. There are several agents, even established agents, I was like, you know what, they liked my tweet, but I don't actually think they're a good fit, just looking at their bio.
Right.
So yeah, you do want to be selective, but assuming you're not in a contest or getting them to come to you, there's some good resources. The Guide to Literary Agents, whatever year, 2016 is the current one. Chuck Sambucino, who works for Writer's Digest and also offers query critiques. I've gotten a couple from him, professional query critiques. That's a good resource. Just, it's paper book, and you have to buy it, and it's big. I think the libraries also probably have it, and just has a whole big directory of agents. I think it's broken down by genre. Can't remember, but it just got like a ton of agents. You can look them up. Look at their bios, see if they represent your genre, sometimes they'll have more personal information or like more specific, like I like small town drama young adult novels versus just I like contemporary young adult. Like sometimes they'll kind of put in details that if they apply to your book, it's like, oh, great, like we're probably a good fit. And a really good place to find that actually is manuscriptwishlist.com, or it's #MSWL. And that's where agents are directly posting their wish lists. It's like a database of agents in all different genres.
So what if you have a specific book, say you have a fantasy book, but you also are a science fiction author, and you find an agent that just like, they like fantasy. Are they the wrong agent for you because they're not also science fiction?
They might be. It depends how serious you are about the sci-fi. I mean, I generally advocate to people trying to find an agent, a career agent, not a book agent. Like, you want somebody, you don't want to have to be going through all this query stuff again after you've already had a book published for a different genre. So if you're really serious, like I'm very serious about memoir as well as young adult fiction and contemporary fiction. So ideally the agent that I sign with will represent memoir, at least potentially down the road. That's really important to me. So that could potentially end up being a deal breaker, even if the agent's really good. If they're like, no, I never touch memoir, I hate memoir, I'm going to be like, I don't know, because I really care about my memoir and I do eventually want it to be published. So that could be a deal breaker. If you're just really like, no, the fantasy book is my baby and I just want to get it out there and here's somebody who loves it, you could always make that decision, get that one out there, and then you might have to find a new agent, or maybe your agent will be like, okay, I'll make some sci-fi connections because I like you and I like your writing. I mean, it wouldn't count on it if they don't. That's a good thing to ask them during an offer call. If they send you a message or call you and say, let's talk about representation, you'll want to ask them, okay, here's the other projects that I have.
So that's basically the offer call is the two-way interview, yes. I guess, sort of thing. So you would come with your list of questions. Mm-hmm. What kind of questions would you have for an agent?
I mean, that's a good one. Here are some other projects I have in mind. Would you be interested in repping those as well? Like, this is where I see my career going. What do you think? What publishers and editors do you have relationships with? Where do you think that you might be able to place my book? Because, if they're a newer agent and don't have a lot of connections, it's a riskier move, because obviously if you can find an agent who's like, okay, I know people at Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, Big Five people, and some smaller publishers, even if they have a mix of those, it's like, okay, that they're really in the industry, they have good connections, this book will probably get picked up by somebody. But if they're like, well, I'm sort of new and I don't really know who I know yet, you could still sign with them, especially if you're having trouble finding an agent, but it is a riskier thing because they might still it'll probably take longer because they're still developing their relationship. So a lot of it comes down to, how much of a rush am I in? Does this person seem to get my story? Kind of asking them what kind of revisions would we be doing to get the story into shape. That's a really important question, because if they say, oh, I'm going to want you to rewrite this from page 1 and make the character a boy, it's like, you might not want to do that. So if that's not in line with your vision for the book, then they're not the right agent for you. Okay.
So we talked about this genre or that genre book, and they only represent one. What about medium? Say I'm a writer and I haven't dedicated myself to just the literary prose platform. and I also want to write a graphic novel.
That's trickier because I guess some agents probably do rep graphic novels. I don't see it a lot, so that'll be a trickier find. If you say, well, I'm writing prose books and I also have a graphic novel, you might ultimately have to get two different agents for that. Not at the same time, because they won't do that. But, you might have to go with one for the one project and a different one, because I don't know many that do the crossover, but there probably are some. So that would certainly narrow down your search as you're looking.
And a lot of writers, especially beginning writers, will dream of their book one day being turned into a movie.
Oh, well, yeah.
Do you ask the agent, would you be willing to push to make this made into a movie, or I guess just be my advocate for that?
I mean, you could ask. Generally, agencies have a separate person who does film rights, so you could certainly say, hey, I kind of envision this being a movie someday. I doubt they'll be able to say one way or another, oh, that's definitely possible, or, oh, no way. I mean, they'll probably say, well, we have to see how well the book does, and if the book does well, then we'll talk to our... Yeah.
They're not going to make a movie out of a book that sold 10,000 copies.
Yeah, no, it's unlikely. But what a good question would be is, so who at the agency does the film and television rights, and, how successful have they been at placing... best-selling books as movies, and do you have a few examples? That would be a question that you could definitely ask if you're really... it's hard to imagine being that invested in turning a book into a movie before the book's even out, but it's certainly something, if that really matters to you, you can ask them.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for the career agent and you're thinking long-term, maybe that's something that you just want to, I guess, maybe not 20 years down the road, say, shoot, now I gotta get another agent.
Yeah, no, definitely. Make sure that they're at a good agency, and that's another thing you want to look up on. There's a site called Predators and Editors, so they list most agencies, and they'll have different kind of symbols representing whether this is an established agency, whether they have sales. Publishers Marketplace is worth a subscription to. You can look up what the agent has sold and to who and how often. And I've eliminated agents from my search just based on putting in their name, and I see, oh, they've never sold a YA novel, even though they've expressed interest, or even though they say they like YA, they've never sold a YA novel to a publisher. So that might make me a little more hesitant to submit to them. Or they've only sold 2 books ever and they've been at this for 3 years. What else are they doing? It raises questions. So it's good to know, just because they're an agent doesn't mean they're a successful agent. So you want to really make sure that they're getting stuff done.
Should you always look for an agent that's at an agency?
I think most agents technically are, even if they're by themselves, they'll still call it their name agency. Yeah, I mean, I think it's beneficial, if you can, to go with an agent who's at a bigger agency. Something like Folio, they had... I don't even know how many agents, at least 15 to 20 agents. So it's just nice to be kind of part of that network. They probably have more connections. If they sort of get stuck, they can kind of talk to their colleagues and see, oh, do you know any editors who might like this? Theoretically, they could even pass you on to a different agent at the agency if they're not having luck with the book. I don't know if that happens very often. Probably not, but it's possible, and they probably have more resources, and they're probably more established.
Do you want to find something that's more local to you, i.e., we live in the Los Angeles area, should I look for an agent based in Los Angeles?
Well, it'll be hard to find many, so I would say no. Just because New York is really where all the agents are. I mean, there's some obviously scattered in LA, and there's some in the UK. I wouldn't necessarily recommend agents in Canada or the UK just because I'm not sure they have the same aesthetics necessarily, and it's also probably going to be harder to be in touch with them. But you're probably mostly going to find agents in New York, and I don't think there's a big difference. It's not a big time difference. There's not a lot of cultural differences. I think New York is kind of where 90% of them are, so you don't want to, if you're in LA, to discount those New York agents. So
I'm obviously not going to, unless somebody flies me to New York, I'm not going to New York anytime soon. Do I Skype call, or is it phone call?
Yeah, they'll start with a phone call, and then, my client who signed with an agent said that they've done some Skype calls and things like that. So, yeah, they're pretty good about just kind of communicating. I mean, if you can fly over, just to meet them, if you have the means to do that, I'm sure that's that would be a
I
fun,
would love the
like,
means to do that.
yeah, well, if it's possible, get some frequent flyer miles and, like, go over and meet them, but...
especially when I already work 5 days a week.
Yeah, but if it's not, they'll do it all remotely. They don't really... And sometimes they come to LA. I know, agents travel a lot for different conferences and stuff, so there's definitely chances that you'll eventually meet in person, but there are people that have, like, never met their agent in person.
Okay. So maybe let's wrap up. What's good about the agent that you're looking for? What are we looking for exactly?
Well, you want somebody who is looking for what you've written and kind of what you plan to write. So make sure that they definitely represent the genre you're writing. It's a waste of time if they don't, and they'll be annoyed. And also, like we were talking about, if they also rep other genres that you're interested in. That's pretty much it. If they have kind of personal, like if they're from Michigan and you're from Michigan, like that can always be, an advantage if there's something you have in common. But that might not necessarily be. It's really just, are they looking for what you've written?
Cool. So we got a little bit of time left over. So I understand that you pulled some of these queries from Twitter.
Yes.
Let's go over a couple of them and get more into the nitty gritty about what is a good query.
Okay.
Since that is the title of this video.
So there's this contest going on now called Pitch Wars, and I reached out to the community because I was part of it last year and said, hey, does anybody have a query they'd like feedback on? So I got several submissions, but I just picked a couple that I thought were good examples in terms of where I could give feedback. So this is for a young adult magical realism novel, and I'll just read it over and then kind of talk about a few of the points. So the query is, when Casey's best friend threatens to jump, Casey can't tell if he's serious. Nico's always enjoyed putting himself in dangerous situations, but jumping off the roof of a building, that's a whole new level. Casey doesn't know Nico planned everything out. Nico did his research, he planned this jump, stalked the healer, and made sure Casey called the cops, and everything was set in place. He's ready to jump, and when the cop healer finally arrives, he does. What Nico doesn't realize is the healer can't heal him. His jump is real. Watching his best friend commit accidental suicide breaks Casey apart. The funeral comes and goes. Casey can't keep food down. He can't sleep. He can't focus. Every time he shuts his eyes, he sees Nico's body, a red smudge on the sidewalk. Then, like Nico's reaching out to him from the grave, Casey meets an old classmate, a healer. He helps her home from a party, and Casey, desperate and confused, begs for a healing. She delivers. There's just nothing to fix. When Nico died, something inside Casey did break, the block on his ability to heal. And then for anonymity, I got rid of the title. So title is a young adult magical realism complete at 72,000 words.
So I'm already noticing a few missing things. There's no comparative titles. There's no author bio.
Right.
And the plot itself is really written in there long, and I'm a little bit lost.
Yeah, I felt the same way. First of all, I'm wondering who is Casey. We get a bit about his, best friend being sort of rebellious, but we don't really know who Casey is, how old he is, which is really important for YA or middle grade or children's. You want to say how old the protagonist is. We don't really know what's unique about him. Since this is magical realism, I wanted to use this example because, not everything's contemporary. A lot of people write fantasy, magical realism, things that require world building. And I appreciate that this writer didn't go overboard in the world building aspect, because some people spend like 2 paragraphs saying, in this world, like this is what happens, and these are the fairies, and these are the elves, and and they have this, that's too much for a query. But I think for this magical realism, it sort of stopped me, like, what's a healer? What do they do? Is Casey a healer? Like, why didn't the healing work? What's going on in terms of the magical realism aspects in this sort of realistic book, and like what else isn't realistic? And I thought that maybe they should say that it's a magical realism up front here instead of at the bottom, because it would be less confusing to just say, okay, so this is a magical realism book, they'll be expecting some things to not be realistic. But I definitely think overall this, although it's concise and sort of has an interesting hook, it really does need more about the world and how the world functions. And
that's going to be probably unique to the genre.
Mm-hmm.
If you're creating some sort of alternate world, obviously if you're writing lit fic, we already have the world. We all live in it.
You don't have to do that. That's more about the character and the plot, but it gets tricky, and it is hard to kind of get the plot and the world building in a short query, but unfortunately that's just sort of the balance and the compromise of the query, is just getting in what's really important. And oversimplification is your friend? Probably not. You don't want to, but you don't want to do what this person did and just assume that the reader's going to know what a healer is and what a healer isn't, and that a healer can't heal somebody sometimes. That's leaving too much up to the imagination.
Yeah, it's not like an RPG where we all know exactly what the healer's role is. This is not a video game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of have to say, in this world, healers are people who have this magical ability, or just a sentence somewhere to explain what a healer is, and sort of place us a bit more what's going on. And that'll apply to fantasy and sci-fi too.
Yeah, some things are more standard, like dwarves are pretty much going to be the same across genre, but elves are going to be fairly different. You have your Santa elves, and you have your Tolkien elves.
Yeah.
And even more varied types of elves.
But, I have critiqued some queries that were just too much on that world building aspect, where it was like, they're at war with these people, and then they're doing this, and then this is happening, and it's like, whoa, like, let's focus more on the characters and just put that stuff in where you really need it, but try not to go overboard with it. So it is a challenge, and that's why I always recommend getting professional feedback from somebody, because your story so well, you might make assumptions.
Professional feedback like you?
Oh, well, yeah, I do offer that, but, there are, other editors, and I teach a class for Antioch University on it as well. But, yeah, just, at the very least, have a few friends, especially fellow writers or a critique group, read it over, and ideally people who don't know your story, or at least don't know it well, so they can say, this doesn't make sense, who's this? Because you kind of accidentally make assumptions. Like, oh, people will know that this guy, because he has a friend like this, is like this. Or they'll know healers, they've heard of healers, they know what healers are. It's like, no, but I'm confused. So it definitely helps to either get amateur or professional feedback, ideally both.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to the next one?
Let's see. Yeah, so this one didn't have an author bio. That might have just been because of the, I told them it would be anonymous, so they might have left it out, but if they didn't, and they also do need the comp titles for sure, because I don't know where this would be placed. I can't really think of any other young adult magical realism books, so that would be helpful. But yeah, good length and concise, just needs to be a little more clear.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to number 2.
So this one is for a, just kind of a general contemporary fiction. After the death of her fiancé, Sophie is struggling to keep herself together. Painting is the only way she's able to clear her head and stay grounded. She's a year away from finishing graduate school, but working too much at a local coffee shop to pay rent that she feels like she's falling behind. When her thesis advisor takes an interest in her, Sophie thinks that he's the mentor she's always been hoping for, except he's not. Following their violent affair and a hospital stay, Sophie is back to square one and pulling herself back together. It's not just her fiancé that she's working through anymore. It's the loss of herself and her ability to create. If Sophie doesn't confront her trauma and work through her pain, she may never be free from the nightmares and flashbacks that are holding her hostage. Touching on grief, sexual violence, and coping with PTSD, Title is a raw exploration of human emotion and what it takes to save your own life. Title, a book club fiction, is complete at 75,000 words and will appeal to fans of Jodi Picoult, Kate Tempest, and Maria Hornbacher. I have my BA in Creative Writing and Literature from Blank University, where I am also working towards an MA in English and Creative Writing. I am a contributor for Hello Giggles and XO Jane. My debut novel, Title, came out this month. When I'm not writing personal essays or journaling about my next project, I'm typically binge-watching something with a glass of wine. In parentheses, I have suggestions. Binge reading my backed-up NetGalley queue, or planning my next trip.
NetGalley?
I don't know what that is. So this author told me that this was kind of personalized for a specific agent. So some of those kind of, like, hobby details, the things at the end, might have been because she knew that agent, or, yeah, maybe saw that they liked wine and wanted to sort of connect around that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my feedback, well... Maybe we'll start just kind of with the overall feedback.
Yeah, maybe we should look at it as if it was for a general agent. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're just saying, this is your stock, and then you can personalize this and this and this.
Yeah, so I mean, that last section, you know, if you kind of know the agent, or it's a referral, or you've been following them and talking to them, and you know they like certain things, yeah, you could try that. I don't know if it honestly makes a big difference. It might catch their attention a little, but it's not really going to be a make it or break it in terms of whether they sign you. They kind of are still going to be looking at story and query and platform. But the rest of the bio is really, really strong. You know, she said where she has her BA in English from, and she's getting an MA in English and creative writing. She contributes to some publications, so that's always a good sign. Um, the talking about her debut novel, that was a self-published title, and that gets a little tricky. I know a lot of people do have self-published titles and then they try to get an agent, and I think you have to be pretty transparent about that when you're querying, because they will look you up on Google and see if they see, oh, this person has a bunch of books. They'll look and see, okay, they're self-published, and that's not necessarily a deal breaker at all. Like, a lot of agents are fine with that, but they'll probably want to know your sales figures and just how they did, and not necessarily in the query, but those questions will probably come up.
Yeah, and if they're low, then that could hurt you.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, it's hard to get a big audience for a self-published book. So I always struggle with, I'm not sure whether to recommend people even disclose it in the query. I think they probably should, because they'll probably find it.
Yeah, they'll find out, you let the parent know so that they don't find out later.
Yeah, because then they might be like, oh, why didn't she tell me that that she had self-published titles, and now I need to know more information about them. It's probably better to be pretty transparent and maybe even talk a little bit about sales or why now you want a traditional publisher, because you could be honest and just say, I'd really like my next book to be traditionally published, for whatever reason. In terms of the query itself, I think it's really, really strong, and it's one of the stronger ones that I've gotten, for critique. She sets up the story pretty well after the death of her fiance. Sophie's struggling to keep herself together, so we have some immediate conflict. Painting's the only way she's able to clear her head, so we know she likes painting. We have a better sense of who she is. We know she's in grad school, and then we know that she's going to meet this guy who's very destructive. The only feedback I really had was that it wasn't really clear how Sophie was going to confront her trauma. It's important in these kind of little synopses to convey that sort of dark night of the soul that they're going to be having. Like, what's the final battle? Like, whether it's just a physical battle, like there's a war that's going to come to a head, or even if it's internal, facing your own trauma, like how is that going to manifest in the plot? Because they might just think, oh, is she just going to be walking around? Yeah, that doesn't sound very engaging, but if you say then Sophie ends up on the streets and she must figure out what's going on before she's homeless forever. I don't know, that's a bad example, but what's actually happening? Can you incorporate what's actually happening when she's confronting this trauma, and what forces her to finally confront it? And that paints a better picture of the overall story.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the hook is, except he's not. That line right there. Is that a little too late in the...
Not necessarily. I mean, I think sometimes it takes a little longer to set things up. It sort of depends where the story starts. It might raise a little bit of a red flag, like how long is the setup going to go on for, but it's a little tricky, especially when you have something that's more literary. You kind of want to introduce the character in a complex way and sort of where she's coming from before the thing happens. It could maybe be cut back a little to get to that, except he's not sort of hook a little faster. But I don't know. I felt like it worked. I felt like there were enough details that I was engaged until we got to the hook. And then, we don't get too much information about it, but she does keep it short, and I still, I think it's very concise and well written, and just with a little more detail, I think it'll be a very effective query. And she's got good, comp authors, and talks about some of the themes, so they'll sort of know, okay, these are the themes that this is going to be addressing, and do I know an editor who's looking for books on those themes?
Okay, very cool. Any parting advice for these budding authors out there for querying?
Parting advice. I mean, just do your best. I don't, queries are hard, and it once took me a good month or two to write just a good query, especially for something like a memoir or a more complicated project. Just don't be too hard on yourself. Read a lot of queries that are successful, get feedback, be patient, and just know that it can be kind of a frustrating, annoying process, and the querying itself can be, you need a lot of patience. You need to try not to let the rejection gut you every time, you either don't hear back or you get a rejection, and just know a lot of it's not personal. They're just inundated, and they have to be really selective. So, people usually have to query at least 100, maybe 200 agents before they actually get that yes.
Now, one last step before we move on to, what are we looking for an agent for? Is it only going to be for long works like books or scripts?
Probably not. I don't know. There might be script agents. I mean, this mostly applies to, book length works. Most agents don't take poetry or
short stories.
Some will take short story collections. Definitely not short stories on their own. But most of the agents out there are looking for books, like books that are at least, depending on the genre. Oh, and word count, really quick. You want to make sure you have an appropriate word count for your genre, because that's something that I see go wrong a lot. Just look up word counts for genres on Google, and you'll see, they each have sort of a range that they should fall into, and if it's way too long or way too short of that, you're gonna probably have your query ignored.
I.e., you don't want a 200,000 word young adult fiction.
Oh, no. I mean, you shouldn't have probably that for any genre. That's way too long. And you also don't want, like, a 30,000 word young adult novel, because that's just way too short. So, yeah, make sure that your book is falling in that range, and if it's not, you're going to need to probably lengthen it or cut it down, because they're not going to want to see, like, a really, really long or really, really short book in that genre.
Cool. So where do you suggest that people find you?
Okay, you can find me at my website, alanasaltz.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Alana Saltz. And I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/Alana Saltz.
Okay, this is very good. We'll have all this information up on the web for our people to peruse.
Okay, great.
All right, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to podcast number 9. Podcast number 10 will be out in November. It will come out on a Thursday. Follow us on Facebook and or Twitter at CH Writers Group to find us there. We are Coffee House Writers Group on Facebook. You can follow me. I am your host, editor, and producer, J. Brian Jones. Follow me at that Twitter handle, a Y in the Brian. And go ahead and visit us on Meetup. Find us there, Coffee House Writers Group, city at the end of the name. Go forth and create.